Are you a physician, nurse practitioner, fertility educator, or medical professional interested in learning more about the role of fertility awareness-based methods in women's health? Do you want to know more about the latest in femtech, the role of diet and lifestyle in fertility, and the way fertility awareness-based methods can help couples conceive? Then join me, Teresa Kenny, and our friends from FACS at their 2022 virtual conference. The conference kicks off on Thursday, May 19th, and will be followed by 4 half-day sessions hosted virtually around the world from May to August 2022. The 4th and final session will be held both in person and virtually in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Check out the conference website at factsaboutfertility.com to preview upcoming speakers and topics for all 4 sessions. Session 1, live from Ireland, starts on May 21st. FACS hopes to offer both continuing medical education and nursing credit for live and recorded sessions. Conference attendees will learn more about fertility awareness-based methods and their application in the management of common women's health concerns. Registration is now available, so spread the word to friends, family, and colleagues. Discounted student pricing is available, so don't wait. More information is available on factsaboutfertility.org.
I do want women to know that there is an alternative to suppressing their bodies with hormones, that they can see their body as a good and they can live in that body holistically.
Totally. Oh my gosh.
It's amazing.
Join co-hosts Jamie Rocci and Teresa Kenny as they educate women about the beauty of the feminine design and empower women to take charge of their health.
They're going to be so amazing. You're going to be so empowered by understanding your feminine genius and your hormone genius. I don't think I could live my whole life knowing this and not sharing it with anyone. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Hormone Genius Podcast. Today, Teresa and I have a bit of a unique episode in that we are talking to a male interviewee. So we're interviewing Dave Guetterman from Cedar Falls, Iowa. And the reason why Teresa and I thought this would be such a fun interview, because again, it's something that we're doing and it's new, is we want our listeners to understand that charting isn't just for the woman, it's also for the man. It helps men understand what's going on within the woman's cycle. Therefore, it helps men and husbands understand a little bit more about how to cooperate with the woman's hormones. And so Dave and I know of each other for quite some time, and I'll let Dave share a little bit more about his story and how he came to be on this interview in this way, because I've never met any man so passionate about hormone awareness as I have with Dave. So Dave, I'm going to turn it over to you. Share with our listeners a little bit about you. Like, what do you do for work? I mean, you're just like this average guy, your kids, how did you come to be kind of really interested in this topic?
Yeah. Thank you, Jamie. And thank you for Teresa for having me on. I never thought I would be on this podcast talking about this topic. But I am very excited to be doing it because the journey here has been one of, you could say, a little bit of confusion, a little bit of guilt, a little bit of shame, but a whole lot of positive outlook for what I want to share with men and women, and also how important it is for men to understand their women and also their daughters, and also for their sons to understand. So very passionate about it because we have a lot of work to do to start educating everyone on this topic. My journey here, started when I met my wife, actually. So I'll kind of start towards the end of my journey in getting introduced to practice and starting down the NFP road with you, Jamie, right before our marriage. My wife was very passionate about taking a very healthy and natural way to conceiving and to also abstaining from having children, so planning our family. And that started when we met you and started working with you. My background, I grew up on a farm in Kansas, and just a traditional row crop farm. And then I moved to Cedar Falls, Iowa, to work for John Deere in 2007, and met my wife in 2009, and we got married in 2013. And that's kind of where our journey started. I have a lot to share about why I'm so passionate about it, and I'm sure we'll get there throughout the conversation. So,
Dave, if anybody could in the world, want to know what a Midwestern drawl is, just like what a classic, like this is how people in the Midwest talk. That's you. I love it. And you work for John Deere, so it's like perfect.
Yeah.
Listeners all over the place, like, yeah, that's a Midwesterner.
Right. Yeah. So I did work for John Deere. I left John Deere actually a year ago and started our own ag equipment business here in Cedar Falls. So running that currently by myself and starting to grow that and excited. But the draw that you mentioned, I think is partly what attracted my wife to me. I used to read at church and she's always curious about this guy that had this funny accent and where was he from. And so
that's good. That's great. Well, I'm so excited that you want to talk with us about this. I feel like if my husband was on, he'd be like, oh my gosh, Dave and my husband's name is Dan. We're best friends already because my husband's equally as passionate about this stuff and just years of learning through me and just our marriage and all the struggles and just everything has led him to this point now where he charts for me. It used to be I charted. Now he charts for me, but we have 2 daughters and 6 sons, and he is not afraid to talk to his sons about women's cycles. He's not afraid to talk to his daughters. And it's such a blessing. And I feel like in this world of, NFP fertility awareness, we really have been focused on the women. Why? It's important because most women don't know about it. Mm-hmm. But it's so important for men because this is what creates that bond between 2 people. So just so grateful that you're here and willing to speak to us.
Well, I'm excited that you guys are doing the podcast because this, I know Jamie pretty well and we've shared some pretty intimate stories and passion for this. So the fact that this podcast exists, I think is terribly important and I'm excited to be on it.
Yeah. And something I know too about you, Dave, is just your boldness when it comes to this topic. It's very common, I think, and you could speak to this more, that men likely feel like, oh, well, this isn't my issue. This is my wife's issue. Her fertility is hers. So I'm going to let her manage all of it. So whether it be birth control or charting or whatever, her body, her situation, right? But we know that that's not the case necessarily at all, nor should it be. It might seem that way, but it doesn't have to be that way. So Dave, can you talk to us a little bit about maybe how you saw, like how women's fertility, how you viewed that before you were married, and then now kind of after charting and understanding how your wife operates in terms of her hormones, how you view that now?
I didn't give it a lot of thought before I got married, unfortunately. And I don't want to blame it on anyone other than my ignorance. But I mentioned my shameful part or kind of the guilty part, because in high school, really anytime past puberty, and then through high school and college, I say I was just another man living in today's culture and going along with societal norms. And I had certain expectations of girlfriends and kind of women in general that weren't healthy and very selfish too. And I never gave it a lot of thought other than that's how my friends looked at women. And that's how I feel like society looks at women. And so that's how I looked at women. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until, and I think part of it is when you don't know and you don't know what you don't know, then what's the difference? Mm-hmm. And so as I started to learn about it in 2000 and really in 2012 before our marriage, and then I started to see, let me back up just a little bit. I saw behaviors in Krista but I saw them in girlfriends too that, they scare you because you're like, who is this person? and then in a week later, they're gone and she's great again. And so the more I started learning about her hormones and kind of her cycle, I guess, that the whole month cycle, not just right before her period, learning right before her period is kind of where it all started. But I started to piece it together where I could correlate what I had learned about where she is in the month to her behavior. And I think as a couple, what's benefited us the most is she doesn't recognize it sometimes, and she doesn't think about it because it doesn't really impact her like it impacts me. Right. So I'm intimately interested in knowing why she's behaving the way she's behaving. And so, once we started to piece that together, I just wanted to know more. And that's where my questions to you would always come from is, well, what about this situation? And what about that? And then obviously we started charting with the Creighton model in 2013 there towards the end of 2012. And that's when it all started to come together, and the passion and the interest really started to grow in me. You asked about how does it benefit the marriage? So we've since kind of switched to the Marquette method, where we use the Clear Blue monitor and we track more of the hormone, or we test for the hormone, and we found that for us it's working a little bit better, and it kind of makes it easier for us to understand where she's at in the cycle for the month. We've really gotten it now to where we know, right? It's a team, kind of know where she's at. Really, I kind of know when to say something and when not to say something that I shouldn't. So.
Oh gosh, that is so true. I feel like, if every marriage could be prepped on like literally going through the cycle and just understanding women's hormones, but also, I remember early in my marriage, I just, and this is women not understanding men, I feel like. So it always goes both ways, right? It's not like, oh, men, you just need to understand women and get the picture, right? No, women need to understand men as well. And we all need to work together, like you said, to, help our relationships grow. But I remember my husband, he was just so excited. It was like, I'm married now. Like I get to have sex. This is the thing. Like, it's like the real deal is here now for a long time. And all of that, how it is, and we all know chemistry is different when you're, dating and engaged, and then you're married, and it changes. Right. And I feel like women too, once they're pregnant, just things change. But for men, I feel like they still feel like that young man that just is like, I'm just so excited to be with you. I'm so excited to be close to you in this way. Yep. And for women, I feel like there is distractions and there's hormones, and the nurturing of children change that in a way that it doesn't change for men. And it took me years to figure out how important it was to still know that was so important to him, and to not in my cycle just be like, like what, it just, I don't care, all that stuff. I needed to know that in our relationship, for me to understand how important this was to him, was to love him. Yep. And I just, from my perspective, that's how women really need to kind of engage in that. It's equal. That's
so true. With Krista, obviously very attracted to her, and old Dave thought that women think like men, that we want to have it all the time. Don't you? Right. We want to have sex with you because you're attractive. I like you. It wasn't until I understood her cycle that I understood her desires, her interest, what drives her interest. They're not at all like men. And, we know that, men know that. But I think there's an expectation that they should be like us, especially in today's society where men and women, they're no different. Well, there's a lot of difference. And it really changed how I respect her and how I approach our intimate relationship, because I know she's not like me. I know there's times in the month where she has no interest because of where she's at in the cycle. There's also times in the month where she's more interested than me, right? It's that natural instinct and nature's law of this is what we need to do. And when you're abstaining, that can be a very difficult time to resist one another. But the biggest, I guess, to your point, the biggest takeaway is I know she's not like me, and she doesn't have that same drive that I do to want to do that. Maybe some women do, but she doesn't.
And I will just say, like, something I've learned too is, I can't speak for every woman, but for me, I might assume, like, my husband, you know, he's tough. Like, it doesn't hurt his feelings. He'll be fine, you know, let's just say. But actually, I've realized men are far more sensitive to this than really far more sensitive. So as you're talking, Dave, I can imagine that now that you know her cycle, and now that you know, wow, her drive is low and it has nothing to do with me. She still loves me, even though maybe she doesn't want to have sex right now, but it's because of her hormones. Don't you feel like there's kind of like that peace and that relief to know it's not about you. She loves you. It just doesn't look the same way in this very moment.
Yeah. The first couple of years of our marriage, I went into my marriage the same way I'd say 95% of men do that don't know this, thinking the door is open and let's have fun. Right. And the first couple of years were difficult because men don't take rejection well. Right. We want to be bolstered and told how great we are, and we want to be wanted, and we want to be touched and needed. And it wasn't until we took a marriage retreat on the 5 love languages, and the timing was great because we were a little bit at odds, primarily on our love, on how we felt about each other in terms of love. I knew I loved her, and she knew, I knew she loved me, and she knew I loved her, but we weren't showing it right. Mm-hmm. And once we took the love languages course retreat, we learned, I'm very much a physical touch guy. I want her to come at me physically and hug me and kiss me and want to have sex with me. That is not at all her love language. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't show me her love that way. Mm-hmm. And so when you couple not wanting to have sex because she's either, the front end of her cycle or towards the tail end and she doesn't feel sexy and she feels bloated or whatever, you couple that with her love language not being physical touch, then the rejection is like, why don't you love me? Mm-hmm. Why don't you want to be with me? She's like, I do love you. What are you talking about? Mm-hmm. And on the same token, she's quality time and I'm not. Mm-hmm. She wants me to sit with her and just be in the room while she folds laundry. Mm-hmm. I want to be working in the garage. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, hey, let's do laundry in the garage. Right? Let's combine our love languages. And that's just one of those other pieces that I've picked up and added to this equation because of that. But to your point, Jamie, you're exactly right. Once I understood, when and why she is desiring me and when she's not, it took all the burden off of, that I was putting on myself of why doesn't my wife want to be with me? Mm-hmm. And on the flip side of that, it's very important to give your wives the space that they need in those times and not feel like she's just here for my pleasure. That's one thing that and I've heard other women talk about it too, is I'm kind of glad I have these times in the month because I need a break, right? I need me time. Mm-hmm. And that can be hard for men to accept and acknowledge.
Mm-hmm. Something else I'll just share real quick is because we know how hormones affect us. So for those of you listening and maybe you haven't listened to some of our earlier episodes, when women are ovulating, our estrogen is extremely high. And so with that, we're very, very fertile, but also men's testosterone increases around women that have high estrogen. And so there's like that natural chemistry. And then when women ovulate, after women ovulate, then our progesterone is high and progestate. It's like this, our body's getting ready to potentially carry a child. And so our uterus is maintaining its thickness in case implantation occurs. But what happens in women's behavior is that they're more like, Dave was mentioning this, like during that ovulation time, women are likely more sexually, or they have a higher libido. They want to have sex. After ovulation, it's not necessarily so much that way. But what I wanted to say, Dave, is like this idea of if men knew their woman's cycle, they would know in a sense how to like hack the cycle in a sense of like women want their men when they're ovulating to be like sweaty, to move furniture for them, to like have like this facial hair and look really masculine when we have high estrogen. It makes us go crazy. But then after we ovulate, men, again, we're having this conversation about how our sex drive decreases. But really, it's not that we're not attracted to our husbands, but we're just attracted in a different way. And they've done a few studies on this, which are it's very interesting. We're more likely to notice our husband, boyfriend, whatever, when they're being nurturing, like when they're bopping the kid on the knee, or when they're playing with their children, or when they're just being very gentle and nurturing. And It's this beautiful thing, because that's what we need if we were to be pregnant. Yeah. So prior to ovulation, we want like a pursuer. Rah! After ovulation, we need like a nurturer. And so I even notice in myself with my husband, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so attractive when I'm ovulating because of his facial hair and his masculine. But afterwards, it just makes me want to get him when he's bopping the kids on his knee. So that's another little hack for the husbands. Like there's different ways to kind of be creative in terms of, that intimacy and attractiveness during the cycle.
Yeah, it's not that difficult. Once you understand it, all of those things you just said are so true. And she says them, it's like clockwork every month. It happens every month at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And, I feel like my husband can like literally, I'll walk in the room and it's right around that time between ovulation and the change. And it's like, he just looks in my eyes. It's just like he knows in a millisecond that I've passed that point, in a millisecond.
Yes.
It's almost like this change from kind of what Jamie's saying, but all of a sudden I'm like, I'm going to look at now what's important for you to do for me. When you're ovulating, you're like, I don't care. It's all great. You're cool, whatever. And then ovulation passed and you're like, did you actually do that thing you were supposed to do? And it's like in your eyes before you even say it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like there. And I'll just see him. He'll be like, oh, you passed ovulation, didn't you? I'm like, what? Come on. I'm like, how can you say that? I'm like, I can just see it right now. Like when you get to that level of intimacy, and I'm sure you're there, it's like so apparent.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're locked in, it's funny because I almost know her better than she knows because she doesn't think about it, especially as she's getting close to having her period. We've got this little thing where she's a healthy eater. She works out and, she's always harping on me about what I eat. And then right before her period, she's in the cupboard, grabbing something sweet, something that's completely out of character for her. And I'll make a comment like, oh, getting close. And she'll be like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you're getting ready to start. You'll start in like 2 days. And she said, oh yeah, I guess I am. That's why I'm eating this. And she doesn't even realize what's happening.
Right now, I'm sure there were a lot of women that just said to themselves, I can't believe he would say that. And I would just throw the ice cream right back in his face.
Well, early in the marriage, I made some mistakes like that and it did not go well. But when you're in lockstep with your spouse about the cycle and each step, she knows, she finds it, I guess you could say she finds it attractive that I do know and that I care. Mm-hmm. And it's not a diss that she's doing it, right? It's part of our life. And it's what we talk about quite often, maybe not every day, but the majority of the month, we know where we're at. Because right now we're not trying to conceive a child.
That's one thing too, Teresa, when you're like, yeah, they might want to throw that like chocolate ice cream at you or whatever. That's another thing too, Dave. I was actually talking to you and Krista about this. I don't remember when, maybe a month ago, and how just to also for the men to be sensitive to this concept of, even though that her hormones are fluctuating, or her, she's in the PMS time, the time before her period, to still not discount the feelings she has. Like she still has those feelings. It's just maybe now she's expressing them in a certain way. Yeah. So not to discount the woman being like, she doesn't mean what she's saying, she's being hormonal. No, she still means what she says. She's just might be a little more intense about it.
I'm so glad you bring it up. If there's, when we talked earlier, I told you that knowing your cycle with your spouse can save your marriage. Every man makes this mistake. I've made this mistake almost every month since we've been married. And just recently she said, one thing that bothers me is that you think I get mad because I'm getting ready to start my period. And while that may be true, partially true. You always discount you always discount, well, this is why you're mad. You're mad because of this. You're mad because you're starting your period. She says, no, I'm still mad about what I want to talk to you about. I'm still mad about topic A, B, or C. But when I'm getting ready to start, it is really the only time in my month that I have the desire or not the ability, but the desire to actually want to bring it up. I have the fight in me to want to finally discuss it, and that was really important for me to hear, because I always discounted this. Oh, she's getting ready to start. She's just in a bad mood.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, that's not it. These things I still am very passionate about, and I still want to talk to you about them. I just had the courage to bring it up now when I'm, because she doesn't like the confrontation. And I'm like, well, thank you for telling me that. That still doesn't make it the right time to talk about it. So we always try to pick a good time to have those more heated discussions. And that generally isn't the right time.
Yeah.
Right.
That makes sense.
That's good to know too, is like, okay, you're going to be bringing up these topics probably before your period. Let's write on a sheet of paper and talk about it in a week.
Yeah.
Talk about it in a week, right? Yeah, because literally the best time, husbands, if you're listening, boyfriends, if you're listening, women, whatever, the best time to talk about these things, definitely after the period up to ovulation. You could still think about it. And then guess what? That woman is going to be so attracted to you then, because you're bringing it up and you're wanting to work through it. It's just the best time to work through something like that. And we're also speaking in very broad strokes. I mean, we're speaking in very broad strokes, so we can't make any promises, but just so helpful. Again, something that isn't super simple, but not as complicated as we make it seem. Dave, how would you sum it up? Like, if you could give a little elevator pitch to the guys, what encouragement or advice would you give them?
Forever, I've heard guys say, we'll never understand women. And I believe that until I started learning this. And I feel like I've kind of got the code, or like the key, right, to the vault on knowing, like the operator's manual of the woman, right? I feel like I know that information now, and it's not that hard. It really comes down to, how great do you want your marriage to be? And I want to have a great marriage, because marriage is hard enough when you do know. And the more you know about one another, and the more you work together and respect where each other's at, the better marriage you're going to have. So I would just say, if you want a great marriage, don't discount it. No, don't discount the knowledge, and learn it with your spouse. And wives, I know when you bring this up, and girlfriends to your boyfriends and husbands, they're probably gonna discount it. And I would approach it like, if you want to know the key to a woman's heart, or the operator's manual for the woman, this is the path we need to go down. And it's taken time. It takes time. This podcast, that's why I'm just so excited that it's on here, is a great way to start. It's an easy way to start. Just listen, go back and find a podcast that you think would relate to your marriage. And I guarantee you're going to find something that's going to help you make your marriage the best it can possibly be. The last several years of mine and Chris's marriage have been phenomenal, because I know where she's at, and she knows where I'm at.
So I think you should write a book, Dave, because everyone right now is like, oh my gosh, like, only my husband was Dave and understood this. And I know, again, it's not the men's fault. It's not their fault. Like, we don't learn this, and God bless you for, I'm sure you feel grateful, like, that it wasn't, it doesn't always happen that way. And so you feel grateful that you have this knowledge that makes your marriage better. But for other people whose relationships are strained, it is a difficult battle, right? To be able to just bring something like this up and be like, hey, I really think if you could just understand my hormones, our relationship would be so much better. So, baby steps. And I guess, if you have any other piece of advice, or if you could just write a book, Dave, for men, that women could just be like, if you could just read this, it's going to work, please.
Even if it's an ebook for now, we would accept that.
Yeah.
Maybe we just do another podcast. I have a hard enough time reading books. I certainly don't have time to write one.
Yeah. And it's so cool, Dave. Like, I just think about how you have your job, you're working with other farmers, you're working with men. I mean, you're a guy's guy, but I just think it's so cool that you have no shame. You're very bold in sharing our podcast and this whole idea of hormone awareness and fertility awareness with your friends and your pals. And what I've been so surprised by here as we close up, Dave, is like how open, when I'm hearing your stories, how open men are to hearing you. Like how I think guys, like you said, they just really want to know, because again, women, we can make our husbands' lives miserable and vice versa, but we're married for the long haul and it can be terrible. But so it's like, we want to know. And so I think we probably underestimate men more than they should be. And we should, assume that they want this information, because many men probably do. So for women listening, your husband probably does want this, especially if there's mood struggles within your cycle. And so, Dave, would you be open to sharing like a way that they could get in contact with you? And we can include it in the show notes too, like an email.
Yeah, absolutely, Jamie. And I want to add one thing to that. Women, as you think about this, is men are problem solvers. And the woman is like the one problem we've never been able to solve, right? We love solving problems. We love looking at data and and information to try to figure out a problem. And I'm not saying women are a problem. Women are a blessing. But that's how I approach it with guys. And I love bringing it up. We work in excavation products too. And I love bringing it up to guys because they have no idea what the heck why I'm coming at them with this, but I'm like, guys, you need to know this. And every time it's like a group of guys huddled around the table and they're just soaking it up. They're like, I had no idea. I'm like, it's not hard, guys. You just got to do a little research. And they're like, man, that was awesome. And they apply it to their lives right now. And I'm all about strong marriages because my parents didn't make it for whatever reason. And I don't want couples to not make it. And I don't want kids to not have parents that are married. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. But yeah, absolutely. They can reach out to me anytime, call me anytime. I love talking about it because I want to save marriages.
Oh, wow. Dave. Oh my gosh. Thank you. We'll be sure to include his email address in the show notes. So again, women, men, if you need to reach out, you just need some support. Dave, maybe you'll have like an online support community. I don't know, but there's something there.
Yeah. So Jamie, I'm just curious. This is the first time we've ever had a guy on the show, and we always close out our show with one question. So I guess how are you gonna do this one? And had you even thought of it?
I did like 5 minutes ago. I was like, how am I going to close this one? Okay, Dave, normally I ask, what do you wish every young woman knew about her hormone genius? But instead, I'm going to ask the question of, what do you wish every man knew about his wife or girlfriend's hormone genius?
Oh, man. To me, it's just sitting down and looking. And again, this is assuming every woman is the same, and every woman is not the same. But just sit down and look at the month cycle. You just look at the average cycle of any woman and then try to figure out with your spouse what hers is. If you can do that, that's all you have to do. You start there. And it's fascinating. It's information that you can apply immediately. And you could literally do it in 5 minutes. Just Google it or email Jamie. She'll send you a chart, or Teresa, and just start with the monthly cycle. I'm still learning with my wife about it. And every day I learn something that blows me away.
Yes. And you guys, all of our listeners, if you aren't already charting, find an instructor, find somebody who can teach you how to chart. FEMM is a great system. Marquette, the Creighton method. There's so many systems. You can go to fertilitycare.org. You can go to managingyourfertility.com and just search around. But again, if you need some advice, feel free to email us at thehormonegenius@gmail.com and we can send you some resources. But Dave, thank you so much for just sitting with us today. And it was so fun. And I'm glad that we branched out and did this episode, because probably more than we three even realize, this is very important for women to hear, that men actually can have these feelings about the cycle. It gives some hope there.
They don't know that they want to know it. So.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, Dave, thank you so much. And have just an amazing day, and keep doing what you're doing, because you're changing a lot of lives and you're saving a lot of marriages, probably without even realizing it.
Thank you guys very much for having me on. It was great.
Hello, this is Jamie and Teresa from the Hormone Genius podcast. We wanted to let all of you know about a couple of ways you can help us keep our podcast rolling. If you visit our website at hormonegenius.com, you will notice a support us button where you can choose to support our mission with a one-time or monthly gift. Over the course of the next 6 months, any person who becomes a monthly giver of a minimum of $10 a month will be considered a founding supporter of our amazing podcast. We also are now welcoming episode sponsors. So if you have a business that serves women and you want the world to hear about it, please visit our website and click on the sponsor button to learn more. Thanks for supporting us as we make it our mission to empower women to be the genius of their hormones. Thanks for listening to the Hormone Genius podcast. Please remember to share our podcast with your friends and family, and also follow us on social media. If you were not aware, we have a YouTube channel. So if you could like and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay in the loop with all of our latest episodes, we would appreciate that. Thank you so much for your support. We are excited to journey alongside you as you discover the beauty and the genius of your hormones.